After some time, He Yan and Fu Xinqing left her father's ward. Seeing the exhaustion on her daughter's face, Yan's mother requested Liang Yuanze to accompany Yan to the hotel for some rest. Yuanze also noticed Yan's pale complexion and suggested, Yan, you've been on the plane for more than 10 hours. You need to rest. I'll stay here with your parents. As Yuanze and Yan were conversing, Fu Xinqing couldn't bear to stay silent and interjected. He Yan immediately introduced Fu Xinqing to her mother, saying, Mom, this is Fu Xinqing. Fu Xinqing followed her voice, his expression changing, and politely introduced himself, Hello, Aunt. I'm Fu Xinqing, Yan's boyfriend. Yan's mother, embarrassed and reluctant, gave a hesitant nod in Fu Xinqing's direction. She didn't engage in a conversation with him but urged He Yan to return to the hotel and rest. He Yan stepped forward and said in a hushed tone, Thank you for everything you've done for me, Yuanze. Liang Yuanze smiled at himself, a mixture of helplessness and bitterness in his smile. What else could I do for you? Go rest and have a good sleep. I'm here. He took out a room card and extended it toward He Yan, who was about to take it. Unexpectedly, Fu Xinqing reached out obliquely, stopping her. No, I have a hotel reservation, Fu Xinqing stated plainly, though his eyes showed a different sentiment. Liang Yuanze seemed taken aback, and his expression turned to one of irritation. Yuanze, please take care of things here, He Yan suddenly spoke up, not looking at Fu Xinqing, and left alone. Fu Xinqing followed her out, grabbing her and questioning, What's the matter with you? What's wrong with me? I'm not the one who's in the wrong here. She angrily shook off his hand and yelled, Fu Xinqing, I know you're possessive. You wish you could mark me to declare ownership. But can you consider the current situation? My father is in a coma, and my mother has aged 10 years in just a few days. It's Liang Yuanze who has been tirelessly looking after my parents. What right do you have to treat him like this? You stole his wife and even had someone cut off his finger. When he saw that you didn't retaliate, he was already showing restraint. He had already endured enough. What more do you want from him? Fu Xinqing clenched his jaw and frowned, What do you expect me to do? Stand aside quietly, watch you and him embrace each other, console each other. Yes, I may be overbearing and unreasonable. Look at the way he looks at you. I haven't plucked out his eyes. It's already a sign of restraint. I haven't pushed him to the edge yet. He pushed her and said coldly, Move out of the way. I need to go back for my room card. She sidestepped him angrily and walked away. As she turned the corner of the corridor, she spotted an Asian man leaning against the wall, peeking toward her father's ward. He Yan seethed with anger. She grabbed the man's clothing and scolded him furiously, Get out of here. Stay away from my parents. She snatched the man's phone away and turned to Fu Xinqing. Can you please tell your lackey to leave? My mother is already stressed enough, and I don't want her to find out things she shouldn't. Fu Xinqing approached Yan and nodded slightly, signaling the man to depart. The man bowed to Fu Xinqing and quickly left. He Yan glared at Fu Xinqing and suddenly questioned, Fu Xinqing, you said you love me, didn't you? Fu Xinqing frowned slightly but answered her, Yes. Do you even know what love is? He Yan asked further. When Fu Xinqing's lips remained sealed, she continued, Love isn't about possession, control, or treating someone as a pet. Love is about respect, cherishing, caring, and trust. She paused suddenly, her lips curling slightly, and muttered to herself, Why am I wasting my breath on you? What do you know about trust? He Yan and Fu Xinqing faced each other, but Liang Yuanze emerged from the ward. Seeing He Yan still there, he inquired, Yan, why are you still here? He Yan turned around and replied calmly, I came back to get your room card. With my father in this condition, I want to be closer for reassurance. Liang Yuanze handed her the room card and said, Give me a call when you reach the hotel. He gave her a deep look and added warmly, Go back, drink more water. Your lips are dry, and don't get too upset. He Yan nodded and didn't say much to him. She entered her hotel room, turned to close the door, and as Fu Xinqing stepped forward to hold it, she glared at him coldly. Upon entering the room, He Yan immediately said to Fu Xinqing with a stern expression, My suitcase is still in the car. Fu Xinqing glanced at her and replied, I'll have someone deliver it. Within a short time, a young man arrived with both of their pieces of luggage. He Yan opened her suitcase, retrieved a change of clothes, and then went to take a hot bath. Although she appeared calm upon exiting, she dried her hair and asked him, Are you planning to rest here or return to your hotel? Fu Xinqing spoke slowly, You're right. I really don't know what love is because no one ever taught me. No one told me about respect, cherishing, caring, or trust. All I've ever learned is competition, exploitation, deception, and betrayal. She was momentarily stunned and gazed at him in silence. He continued with a smile, you can teach me, Yen. Whatever love you teach me, I'll learn it slowly. She stood there quietly for a moment, her eyelashes lowered. Then she showed him the towel in her hand and said softly, first, go take a bath. Fu Xinxing hugged He Yen tightly, feeling her warmth, and then went to the bathroom. While He Yen was packing her suitcase, she noticed the water bottle inside, and her expression shifted slightly. When Fu Xinxing came out of the bathroom, He Yen casually spoke on the phone and ordered a pizza. Fu Xinxing approached her and inquired, what's happening? Yen looked at him and replied softly, nothing, I just ordered a pizza. Do you like pizza? Fu Xinxing answered mischievously, I like whatever He Yen orders. Yen teased him further, saying, then I should have ordered you a waist. Fu Xinxing smiled, I don't recommend it. Yen took a few steps back, tossed her phone onto the sofa, and said, okay, no more mischief. I still have to go to the hospital later to change my mother, so she can finally rest. Fu Xinxing grabbed He Yan's hand and said, He Yan, I want to continue living with you normally. Yen, feeling a bit confused, while drinking water casually said, we'll see. Then she stretched out her hand and asked, for now, do you want some water? Fu Xinxing curved his lips into a smile, grabbed the bottle from He Yan's hand, and casually took a drink. While Fu Xinxing was drinking the water, Yen looked at him silently, her eyes turning blood red, and she started sweating. Concerned, Fu Xinxing asked, what's wrong with you? Are you in pain? She immediately replied, nothing, I'm fine. My phone is dead. Can I borrow yours to call Yang Yuanzi? Though somewhat upset, Fu Xinxing agreed, as you wish. Once the call was connected, He Yan uttered just a single, hello, and then suddenly lost her voice. Yen, Liang Yuanzi called out to her on the phone. But He Yan couldn't respond and fell unconscious on the table. Fu Xinxing, unable to control his own movements, also collapsed onto the sofa. Unable to get a response from He Yan, Liang Yuanzi quickly entered the room from outside, took stock of the situation, and without hesitation, went to He Yan. He retrieved the antidote from his coat and injected it into her neck. Fu Xinxing's consciousness had never wavered. After his initial anger, he seemed to regain his composure. He sat on the sofa, observing everything silently. After Liang Yuanzi injected He Yan with the antidote, he massaged her paralyzed limbs and softly called her name, Yen. How do you feel? Are you conscious? The medicine worked rapidly. After a few minutes, He Yan regained her mobility. She stood up a bit unsteadily and went to retrieve a fruit knife. She spoke in a hoarse voice, kill him, Yuanzi. We can only truly escape by killing him. But Liang Yuanzi embraced her and restrained her. No way, if there's a murder, we'll be wanted by the police. Liang Yuanzi held Yen tightly in his arms and carried her out with him. Before she left, she glanced back at the man on the sofa and declared, Shenjijia, today I will spare you, but remember that good and evil are repaid in kind. Fu Xinxing suddenly remembered how she cried, laughed, acted coquettishly with him, got angry with him, everything she did and every word she said was a deception. Only her hatred for him was genuine. Though his body lacked any sensation, he felt pain everywhere, pain piercing his heart and deep into his bone marrow. Sitting on the sofa, Shenjijia talked to himself. At this moment, Yen had brutally shattered his delusions, and he realized that some things couldn't be changed, no matter how hard he tried. He couldn't become like Fu Xinxing, nor could he learn about Yan's love. He was just himself, Shenjijia, a man who had never received recognition from his father, born and raised in the slums, living a dark life from a young age. While escaping, He Yan asked Yuanzi, what about my parents? Yuanzi reassured her, be calm, Yen. I've already taken care of everything. He Yan persisted, what kind of medicine did you give me? How long will the effect last? Liang Yuanzi replied, it's a neurotoxin extracted from a poisonous spider. Without an antidote, the symptoms will begin to slow down after 72 hours. He Yan, determined, said, Fu Xinxing is always surrounded by many subordinates. He'll regain his senses earlier. I understand him all too well now. She smiled and added, but that's okay. Yen grabbed Yuanzi's hand joyfully and exclaimed, he definitely won't beat me this time. Exactly as He Yan had anticipated, Fu Xinxing didn't wait for 72 hours. On the very night of the same day he was injected with an antidote and began to recover. As the antidote coursed through his body, Fu Xinxing gradually regained consciousness. When he could finally speak, his first command to Jiang, who had just arrived, was straightforward and cold, find her, dead or alive. However, it had been almost 2 days since He Yan had left, and tracking down a person intent on hiding within a bustling city was no simple task. Fu Xinqing remained in AGA for 2 weeks, using all the resources and connections of the Fu family to search every city and town nearby. Despite his efforts, there was no sign of He Yan. She remained elusive, her whereabouts a mystery. A week later, Fu Xinqing's face had become sunken from lack of proper meals and a constant smoking that had become a coping mechanism. One day, Jiang knocked on Fu Xinqing's door. Fu Xinqing turned around with a cigarette in his mouth and asked, "Any progress?" With a worried expression, Jiang informed him, "Based on the data we have, it's assumed that Miss Yan has already left the northeast. But don't worry, I've dispatched our people to those areas according to our data." Fu Xinqing gave a curt command, "Keep looking." On the same day, Fu Suizhi paid a visit to Fu Xinqing and sneered, "Shinjijia, do you still think you have a future? No wonder uncle didn't recognize you initially. You're not worthy to be a descendant of our Fu family." Fu Xinqing, leaning casually against a wide walnut table, played with a cigarette between his fingers and asked, "What do you mean? Say it again." Fu Suizhi was frightened by the icy look in his eyes and quickly changed the topic, asking, "Have you only ever toyed with women like that in your life? You even accepted that stubborn woman. Is she truly worth your reluctance to let go?" Fu Xinqing didn't answer verbally. Instead, he stood up abruptly, striking Fu Suizhi and throwing him against a wall. Fu Xinqing's arm moved swiftly, gripping Fu Suizhi's throat like a vice. Maintaining his indifferent expression, Fu Xinqing spoke lightly, "Fu Suizhi, you should know that I'm not Fu Xinqing, and I don't have much brotherly affection for you. Don't provoke me. This is the last warning. You'd better remember it. Otherwise, I won't hesitate to cut ties with the Fu family." Fu Suizhi's face turned crimson, struggling to breathe. Just when it seemed Fu Suizhi might suffocate, Fu Xinqing abruptly released his grip. Stepping back, he looked down at his brother and said, "Book a ticket. It's time for us to return." 30 days later, in Nanzhao City, Fu Xinqing assumed the role of the head of the Fu clan. He addressed the members in the meeting room, expressing his gratitude for their support and dedication. Old Fu also congratulated Fu Xinqing and reminded everyone that, regardless of his decisions, they should bear their own responsibilities. The members of the meeting room nodded in agreement. Outside on the porch, Fu Suizhi hesitated for a moment before calling out, "Elder brother." Fu Xinqing glanced at him indifferently and advised, "If you don't want to return, stop drowning yourself in alcohol and come work at the company." Fu Suizhi understood the message and nodded in agreement. After the meeting, Fu Xinqing returned to his apartment, lay down on his bed, and muttered to himself, "He Yan, if you've managed to escape, don't let me find you for anything, or you won't like what I'll do when I catch you." The next day, Fu Xinqing received a message from someone while he was still sleeping. When he checked it, he found that it was from Chinhagua, who had been trying to contact him. Fu Xinqing chose not to reply and put the phone down. Shortly after waking up, he received a call from Old Fu. He answered with a simple, "Hello." Old Fu said, "Tomorrow, you will go on a date with the Tian family. They have been longtime supporters of the Fu clan." Fu Xinqing remained silent. Old Fu continued, "We discussed this last time, you need to start building your own family." Fu Xinqing agreed and said, "Okay, I will go." When Fu Xinqing arrived for the date, he was taken aback by the appearance of the girl. Unexpectedly, the girl asked directly, "Mr. Fu, is there something wrong with my face? You seem surprised." Fu Xinqing quickly composed himself and replied with a light smile, "I was momentarily struck by how lovely Miss Tian looks, much like a Wang Fu flower." The girl chuckled and asked playfully, "Are you complimenting me? You should praise my beauty instead." Fu Xinqing smiled faintly and said nothing in response. After their meal, the girl continued in a joking tone, "While tradition dictates that girls should be more reserved, I'm not one to adhere strictly to conventions. If I like someone, taking the initiative would make me secretly happy. If I don't, I'd rather try my luck. What do you think about that?" Fu Xinqing raised an eyebrow slightly and remarked, "Miss Tian's candor is quite refreshing." "Do you like people who are candid?" the girl inquired. He didn't respond directly. Instead, he chuckled and asked, "Do you enjoy watching movies? My assistant mentioned that inviting a girl to the movies is a good way to start." The girl's eyes lit up, and she said with a smile, "You have an excellent assistant." Fu Xinqing indeed took her to see a movie and walked with her while listening to her chatter. When they finally reached the car, Fu Xinqing said, "Miss Tian, I think that's enough for today." Without hesitation, Tian stated, "I like you." Fu Xinqing's expression darkened slightly at her words, but she continued, "Despite conventional wisdom advising girls to be more reserved in such matters, I believe that if you like someone, taking the initiative is a better choice. So, Mr. Fu, if you're not tired of me, could we spend more time together? Recalling old Fu's words about Tian being a suitable match for the Fu family, Fu Xinxing gazed at her and said with a smile, all right, considering Miss Tian's directness and your background, I doubt any man could refuse you. Tian beamed with happiness and excitement, grabbing Fu Xinxing's arm. She said, well then, Mr. Fu, shouldn't you accompany me home? Over the next 2 weeks, Fu Xinxing and Tian spent a lot of time together, going on various dates. Then one night, blushing, Tian said, Mr. Fu, during all these days, I've grown fond of you, and, you know. Fu Xinxing interrupted her, you know what? She hesitated before saying, do I have to spell it out? Fu Xinxing curved his lips into a smile and playfully pulled her closer. Tian stared at him with a mix of annoyance and embarrassment. She clenched her teeth, about to gather the courage to speak, when her phone rang from inside her handbag. Fu Xinxing couldn't help but laugh and said, you should answer the phone first. I'll wait. Tian picked up her phone, and upon hearing the voice on the other end, her face lit up with surprise and joy. She exclaimed, He Yan, is that really you? Where have you been all this time? Are you finally with Liang Yuanze? Fu Xinxing froze upon hearing He Yan's and Liang Yuanze's names. He struggled to contain himself, as if keeping still was the only way to control his emotions, preventing him from grabbing the phone from Tian's hand. He couldn't believe he was finally getting news about He Yan after all this time. Tian was so excited that she didn't notice Fu Xinxing's unusual reaction. She continued talking to her friend on the phone and learned that He Yan was currently in Shizhou. She couldn't help but wonder, how did you end up in Shizhou? He Yan laughed and replied, it's a long story, but everything is fine now. I just wanted to call you so you wouldn't worry anymore. From now on, we can communicate normally. I'll call you later. After she hung up the phone, Liang Yuanze called her over. He showed her an old couple figurine in a musical box and said, this is us when we get old. He Yan smiled and responded, wait until we're old, and there will surely be a house full of grandchildren. When that happens, buy more of these. Liang Yuanze suddenly asked in a hushed tone, Yan, you're still thinking about revenge, aren't you? She hesitated for a moment, then with a bitter smile, she replied, did you find out? Yuanze nodded and said, I noticed your search history on the computer. You suspect that bastard had plastic surgery in the West, right? He Yan lowered her gaze to her wrist, where the ugly scars remained, and whispered, yes, his personal doctor mentioned it to me. She continued, Yuanze, I feel like a devil in my heart. I can't let go of the past. Tears welled up in her eyes as she added, we never harmed anyone. We never broke the law. Why should we bear these injuries? Why should we change our names and leave our hometown, while Fu Xinxing, who committed numerous crimes, remains unpunished? Liang Yuanze spoke with determination, let's go together. I'll accompany you to the west to see the doctor. He Yan hesitated even more at this suggestion. She didn't want him to take any more risks for her, so she smiled and said, forget it, let's settle down and live our own lives. Good and evil will be rewarded. People like him will face justice sooner or later. His happiness is not worth our lives. Liang Yuanze smiled warmly and said, the wise wife is always right. Instead of battling scum, it's better to focus on making money so that we can bring our parents here as soon as possible. He Yan's heart warmed, and she turned to embrace Liang Yuanze, whispering, thank you, Yuanze. Thank you for always being there for me. Thank you for not leaving me. A few days later, it was the Christmas holiday. He Yan and Liang Yuanze took a car to the supermarket to buy discounted items. After finishing their shopping, they walked a long way back to their home. He Yan's arms were tired and sore from carrying the bags. She handed everything to Liang Yuanze and said, hold these, and I'll open the door. She hurried to the front steps, opened the door, and turned on the lights. When she turned around, she was struck motionless by the sight of a tall man sitting on their sofa. Liang Yuanze followed her inside and, upon seeing her reaction, also froze. Both of them stared at Fu Xinxing, who spoke in a deep voice, it's been a long time.